Picture this. Imagine waking up one morning, pulling open the curtains, and realizing your entire city is gone. Streets silent, homes abandoned, life vanished overnight. You step outside and call for your neighbors, and only your own voice echoes back. The smell of damp earth invades your nostrils, vines creep up the lampposts, and in the distance you hear nothing but the rustle of leaves. It's haunting and surreal. Now, this isn't the start of some apocalyptic film. It actually happened. Back in the 13th century, the largest city on Earth, home to over 1 million people, was swallowed by the jungle. A metropolis greater in scale than medieval London, Paris and Rome combined, vanished. And here's the kicker. This empire built Angkor Wat, a temple complex so massive it makes the Vatican look small. So how could a civilization so powerful, so advanced, simply disappear off the map? The thought sends shivers down your spine. Stick around, because what brought Angkor down isn't just ancient history. The same forces are lurking in our world today, in ways you might not expect. Before we dive in, smash that like button, share this with a mate, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard and will make you see the present differently. A storyteller named Name has always been fascinated by civilizations that simply fade away. When he was a kid, he and his cousins would explore abandoned farmhouses on the outskirts of their town. They would peer through broken windows, run their hands along dusty furniture, and imagine the lives that had been lived there. Each deserted room felt like a time capsule, a puzzle begging to be solved. That same curiosity fuels his interest in Angkor, the grand capital of the Khmer Empire. This wasn't some minor kingdom. It was a city whose scale dwarfed most of Europe's capitals. It crafted temples that rival Egypt's pyramids and an engineering system so sophisticated it boggles the mind. And then, just like that farmhouse, Angkor was abandoned and reclaimed by nature. You're about to embark on a journey through time to discover how the Khmers created the world's largest city, built monuments like Angkor Wat, and vanished without a trace. Along the way, you'll see the eerie parallels between their collapse and the challenges we face today, from climate change to over-engineered systems and fragile social structures. Stay with us, because at the end, we'll reveal the fatal error that destroyed Angkor and why it could happen again in the modern world. There's always that one quiet kid at school, the one who sits at the back, keeps to himself, and blends into the crowd. Then out of nowhere, he becomes the most talked about student. That was the Khmer people. For centuries, they were just one of many ethnic groups in Southeast Asia, living in small principalities and swapping goods with their neighbors. They farmed the fertile floodplains of the Mekong, worshipped local spirits, and paid tribute to more powerful kingdoms like Funan and Chenla. Life was local, not imperial, until it wasn't. In the year 802, everything changed. A charismatic leader named Jayavarman II declared himself Chakravartin, the universal ruler. Imagine someone standing up and announcing, "From now on, I'm not just your king, I'm the cosmic CEO of the universe." It wasn't just grandiose, it was revolutionary. With that declaration, Jayavarman II unified the disparate Khmer communities under one banner. He didn't do it alone. He forged alliances through marriage, rewarded loyalty with land grants, and led military campaigns that expanded his realm across what is now Cambodia and parts of Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. Think of him like a startup founder who transforms a garage operation into a multinational corporation overnight. But instead of venture capital, he used charisma and religious legitimacy. People followed him not just because of his armies, but because he tied his rule to the divine. The concept of the Devaraja, the god-king, meant that loyalty to the king was loyalty to the universe itself, Priests anointed him, inscriptions proclaimed his cosmic mandate, and new capitals like Hariharalaya and later Angkor were built to celebrate his victory. As this new cosmic order took root, temples rose from the jungle, canals were dug, and a network of roads stitched the countryside together. Within a few generations, the Khmers were no longer a quiet kid in the classroom. They were the star athlete, the head prefect, and the school captain all at once. But how do you persuade an entire population to abandon their old loyalties and embrace a new cosmic order? The answer lies in the story of Angkor's creation, and it's one you won't forget. To understand what made Angkor tick, picture a modern megacity like Sydney or Sao Paulo. Millions of people rely on invisible systems, pipes, power lines, roads, that deliver water, electricity, and food. Turn off those systems and the city grinds to a halt. Now imagine achieving that level of infrastructure 1,000 years ago, in the middle of dense jungle, without electricity or computer modeling. That's exactly what the Khmer engineers did. They built a hydraulic network so intricate that archaeologists today call Angkor a hydraulic city. There were canals that crisscrossed the landscape for hundreds of kilometers, massive reservoirs known as barrays, one of which spanned 16 square kilometers, and another, the West Barray, stretched 8 kilometers long, and moats that surrounded the temples like giant veins. These waterworks stabilized the unpredictable monsoon rains, channeled floodwaters away from homes, and kept the rice fields irrigated throughout the year. In the dry season, farmers could draw water from the barrays to keep their crops alive. In the wet season, the canals acted as overflows, absorbing excess rain. In 2007, researchers using satellite photos and airborne lasers concluded that Angkor's urban sprawl covered at least 1,000 square kilometers. That's an area larger than modern-day Berlin and roughly the size of Hong Kong. And according to NASA's radar imagery, from space, the city's network of canals looks like a computer circuit board, so precise that it resembles a printed circuit, with lines connecting nodes and nodes feeding back into lines. It's mind-boggling to think that all of this was built with hand tools, elephants, and human labor. The largest reservoir alone could hold enough water to fill thousands of Olympic pools. Some estimates suggest that the city may have supported between 700,000 and 1 million people. For the people of Angkor, this hydraulic machine was their lifeline. But perfection has a dark side. When a system becomes too complex, it can break in spectacular fashion. Angkor's engineers had created a marvel, but they had also built a potential trap, and as you'll see, this trap would eventually snap shut. But before it does, we need to explore the role of the rulers who oversaw this machine, and the pressures that pushed them to breaking point. Everyone knows that feeling of being stretched too thin, juggling work, family, hobbies, and expectations until something snaps. The Khmer rulers lived under that kind of pressure every day. They weren't just kings, they were living gods. The Devaraja cult demanded that the king represent the universe on earth. Every temple had to mirror the cosmos. Every canal had to align with the heavens. Imagine having 1 million people depending on you for rain, rice, and spiritual salvation. It's enough to make anyone crack. Evidence from inscriptions and stone carvings tells us that maintaining this divine order required armies of workers. At the Temple of Taprom, a carved stele lists 12,640 people assigned to that single temple: priests, dancers, cooks, guards, and more. Across Angkor, it's estimated that around 300,000 agricultural workers were needed just to feed these temple workers. That's like trying to keep an army of full-time staff fed and happy all the time. For a while, the system held. Angkor flourished. Its temples were gilded, its canals flowed smoothly, and its markets bustled. But in the 13th century, a new spiritual current flowed into the city, Theravada Buddhism. Brought in from neighboring kingdoms, this form of Buddhism taught that there was no permanent self, no eternal royal persona. It emphasized personal enlightenment over state-sponsored rituals. According to scholars like George Coedes, this new faith undermined the Hindu concept of kingship that had underpinned the Angkorian civilization. The royal personality cult, so essential to building those monumental temples, began to wane. People started to question the divine right of their rulers. It's like a tech company whose charismatic founder suddenly steps down and the new leadership wants to turn the company into a not-for-profit. The entire corporate culture shifts. People start questioning why they're there. As Buddhist monks shaved their heads and wandered through Angkor in simple robes, the pressure to fund giant Hindu temples decreased. Royal patronage waned. The workforce began to drift away. Add to that external wars and internal rebellions, and the royal government's ability to maintain public works crumbled. Waterways clogged, reservoirs filled with silt, and the once perfect machine started to sputter. One chronicler later wrote that the king felt as if the gods had become his employees, and the gods decided to quit. It's a poetic way to describe a very real burnout. But the real coup de grace didn't come from within the palace walls. It came from the sky. Have you ever experienced a blackout that lasted for hours? The fridge stops humming, the lights die, and suddenly life feels precarious. Multiply that by 1,000,000, and you'll understand what Angkor faced in the 14th and 15th centuries. According to tree ring studies by climate scientists, Southeast Asia experienced 2 ferocious droughts during this period. The first, in the mid-1300s, was the most sustained drought in the region for 8 centuries. The second, starting around 1400, was shorter but even more severe, with 1403 recorded as the driest year on record. In between those dry spells, the monsoon flipped violently into catastrophic flooding. Imagine trying to manage your household budget when your income swings from feast to famine and back again. That's what Angkor's planners were up against. Their hydraulic city was designed to buffer against normal seasonal shifts, but it wasn't built for this kind of climate whiplash. Reservoirs dried up, canals cracked, and then, when the heavens finally opened, floodwaters eroded the very embankments meant to protect the city. Sediment-filled channels, cutting off major water sources. Think of those viral videos where a single domino knocks down an entire chain reaction. No rain meant no rice. No rice meant no tax revenue. No revenue meant no paid soldiers. No soldiers meant no defense. And when the floods came, the weakened infrastructure couldn't handle it. At the same time, new trade routes were pulling Khmer merchants towards the coast. People began migrating to areas where they could survive. Some scholars believe the populace shifted from inland farming to maritime trade, following opportunities downriver. It's chilling to realize that the same climate patterns, droughts followed by floods, are hitting cities today. You only need to look at the cracked reservoirs of California or the submerged streets of Venice to see history echoing. Our modern infrastructure is as complex and, in some ways, as brittle as Angkor's, and with climate change accelerating, we're pushing our systems to their limits. Yet even with all this pressure, Angkor's end wasn't a dramatic explosion, it was something much quieter. We've all had those moments when a chapter ends, the last day of school, leaving a beloved home, or finishing a long-held job. There's a bittersweet finality to it. The story of Angkor's last days carries that same poignancy. By the early 1400s, the city was struggling. In 1431, after years of conflict, the neighboring Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya sacked Angkor, dealing a final blow. But there was no grand inferno, no apocalyptic battle that leveled the temples. Instead, what happened was an exodus. Over the course of months and years, Families packed up their possessions and quietly left. Soldiers, priests, craftsmen, and farmers all drifted away. The reasons were many: collapsed irrigation, loss of faith in the royal cult, invading armies, and the draw of new trade centers downstream. But the effect was the same. Angkor Thom's wide avenues grew over with grass, and the jungle started to creep back in. Imagine walking through your hometown and seeing vines snaking through doorways, trees erupting through roofs, and the laughter of children replaced by the calls of birds. That's what explorers later encountered. The French naturalist Henri Mouhot stumbled upon Angkor in 1860 and wrote in his diary that it felt as though the gods had built a city and then forgotten it. He wasn't the first foreigner to see it. Portuguese friars and Japanese traders had been there centuries earlier, but his account captured the imagination of Europe and sparked a wave of exploration. Today, as tourists walk among the roots and stones of Taprom, they witness the exact moment where nature and civilization intertwine. Trees split walls, their roots gripping bas-reliefs like fingers. It's hauntingly beautiful, and it serves as a reminder that even the mightiest cities can return to silence. But before we finish, let's pause and reflect on what this story means for us. Standing among the ruins of Angkor, many visitors feel awe mixed with unease. The awe comes from the sheer scale and artistry. The unease comes from the questions the ruins raise about our world. The first lesson is that complex systems are fragile. Angkor's hydraulic machine was brilliant, but it depended on everything working in harmony. Once the climate pushed it beyond its design, it collapsed. Our modern systems, electric grids, supply chains, internet networks are similarly intertwined. A failure in one area can ripple everywhere. The second lesson is that climate change isn't abstract. The Khmers endured decades of drought followed by brutal floods, and it shattered their world. We're already seeing similar extremes today, from bushfires in Australia to floods in Germany. The third lesson is about belief and cohesion. Angkor thrived when people trusted in their common system. When that trust eroded, the social glue dissolved. Today, when faith in institutions wavers, we see polarization and instability. Which of these lessons feels most urgent to you? There's no simple answer, but acknowledging the parallels is a start. As we leave the jungle city behind, we carry its warnings with us. Angkor didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it was too ambitious and brittle. The Khmers built wonders but couldn't adapt when the climate turned and beliefs shifted. The lesson isn't to stop building, but to create systems flexible enough to bend with storms. When you look at our skyscrapers and global networks, ask yourself, can we keep them standing when the unexpected hits? Our greatest strength lies not in perfection, but in resilience. If this journey through time made you think, hit like, share it with a friend, and comment which lesson resonated with you: fragile systems, extreme climate, or social cohesion. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's mysteries. Together, we can learn from the past to build a better future. Thanks for watching.